Hello, and thank you for tuning in to my channel. I'm going to ask that if you can just bear with me with my limp here that I've been having. Since Tuesday morning my back started playing up again, and I've been housebound since then. It's the first day I've gotten out since Monday, so I'm just asking for a little bit of leeway and a bit of patience, and to excuse my limping for today. What I wanted to and actually it's the meds and the painkillers that are actually allowing me to put up with the pain and actually walk and get out and about right this moment. So what I wanted to talk about was kind of affordable eating out here in the Philippines, and just so happens that I'm going to show you one of the stalls, one of the examples that I'm talking about, which are referred to as, well, I feel referred to as carinderias. If I can just kind of like, if you can see this, they are just to show you the sort of the localized stalls here. And a reason why I'm introducing that into today's video is just to show you a more affordable way of eating. Now these carinderias, obviously I'm relying on the locals if anyone's kind enough to make any comments or suggestions on my feed, and actually show some folks out there, perhaps in America, England, or in the West, how we eat over here in Asia. And I say that because the way I'm able to relate carinderias, which are kind of like the informal cafeterias, if you like, over here, is something similar to the food stalls in Malaysia. Now they got food stalls everywhere in Asia, but I relate it to, in particular, in Malaysia, because you've got so many of these localized food stalls where you can eat local Chinese and Malay food and Indian food, what they call mamak stalls in Malaysia. Nevertheless, food stalls which are have a very informal setting, is like an outdoor cafeteria type, very outdoor eating, where you'll get like an indoor area which isn't necessarily a shop unit as such, although they can be, I guess, but normally a covered area where they got some tables and chairs, and the cooking is normally made, say, by a family-run eatery, and the food is very, very localized prices. Now I compare this to dining out in, say, a restaurant. I would describe a restaurant as more formal eating, and you go into usually a restaurant, a shop unit type, and just squeezing in there in between two tricycles, and you got all your organized kitchen. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't really need to describe a restaurant too much, but more so in comparison, a restaurant being sort of like, you got all your aircon, all the facilities, the services you know, expected to be sort of quite formal as well, where everyone's either got a writing pad to take down your order or a touchpad of some sort. And it's going to be a lot more kind of like formal dining, right? It's going to be more expensive. You got service charges, you got tax on top of that, and all the other stuff, right? Government taxes and service charges normally, usually. Now, albeit that some restaurants don't, but the point here is that when you go into these kind of like informal cafeterias, which are, as I described, kind of like very informal. It could be food that's cooked there and then, like a buffet style kind of eatery where you got a bunch of food that's already pre-cooked. It's already there for you to choose. You can either speak to the person behind all the food who will be, you know, serving up all the food, like plating up all the food for you. You just have to point at what you want, or you take the food by yourself, choose, and then just when it comes to actually paying, you just tell the person serving you what you've had. It's very much on a trust basis, but bearing in mind the locals, you know, they're going to be for the most part honest about what they've eaten, and the obvious question is, you know, why not? The restaurant business and the food business is very much, especially when you're eating first and pay later afterwards, after the meal, is very much on a trust basis, and I'd say probably even more so at these informal eateries like cafeterias. I'm gonna face this way, and the reason why I'm not spinning around my gimbal, it's kind of like it's playing up again. And so yeah, cafeterias is what I, you know, after speaking to a couple of locals and seeing, you know, what they are, sort of interpreting what would make an eatery here a cafeteria, appears to me, seems like something very similar to like your coffee shops, your cafes, your little coffee stores in Malaysia. Now that could be within a covered area where you got several stores that are sort of like divided up into spaces and one big eating area. So you could have you know, 5 or 6 different stores, and each store has their own individual vendor, and each of them doing different types of meals. Just bear with me as I cross over here. But what I found more of over here is that the cafeterias are more sort of like your single stores. So I'm sort of walking underneath one now, and basically the way I sum it up is that essentially they are restaurants, but more informal type restaurants, where, you know, a lot of the things are sort of cut out from your, you know, regular type of formal restaurants, if you like. You know, maybe a fan or something like that to keep it cool, and people that are serving could be a family member. It's like I say, usually family run typically, or between family and friends, or you get like just some person cooking and collecting the money, and it's a kind of like a self-service type of way of eating. So my point here is that you know, as far as your eating budget goes, if you do have an eating budget, then, you know, I'm going to give you an example of just a couple of my experiences. I tend to come to these places quite often, as it is very affordable. Let's say, for instance, I'll give you one example where I went into one of these cafeterias to have some fried noodles, which over here they call fried noodles, they call them pancit over here, which is inspired by, you know, Chinese noodles. And so what you got is say some pancit and some fried fish, and that particular meal cost me I think with one water or something like that, it cost me 125 pesos, which is either 2 UK pounds or $2.20 in US dollar terms. You know, just call it a couple of bucks. Or another example where one evening a few nights ago, or last week, in the evening time, I went to quite a nice cafeteria where it was kind of like a shop, a very small kiosk type shop unit, where they just got a few seats, but it's done up really nicely, and it was 200 pesos for it's a favorite local dish of mine called sisig, which is pork, and had a beer with that, and a beer as well, which worked out to be 200 pesos, which is £3.20 UK pounds, and $3.60 in US dollar terms. So just over £3 and about $3.50 for a rice meal. It was a rice dish with the pork and a beer, a San Miguel, for just over £3, which is just over, $3, $3.50, $3.50, yeah. And this is just to give you an example of the affordability you can eat when you want to go out to eat very informally, and there's no reason why you can't do that quite regularly, whereas opposed to eating in a restaurant. Well, any restaurant you go to, any restaurant in the world, whether it's going to be in the West or anywhere in the world, Asia, Southeast Asia, wherever, a restaurant is a restaurant, which takes consideration with the rent of the restaurant, the staffing costs, and then you got all the food stock, you got the utilities, you'll have aircon, but you know, all this cost in your bill, it's all going to be priced in, taking in consideration of all these overheads for the actual restaurant, which is why it's considerably more to eat in a restaurant than it is in, say, an informal setting like an outdoor cafe or eating street food outside. Yeah, but all I'm trying to say is that when you eat outside, you're eating good local food for much more affordable prices, as much as 50-60% less expensive, yeah, more affordable, yeah. And so, you know, it's kind of like the difference between going to a market stall and say like a mini mart or something like that. Maybe the similarities, the correlation between you know, those two, the sort of prices that I gave you, you would, you know, you would be able to realistically eat for very affordable prices. I mean, the way I tot it up, if you were to eat a couple of times at these cafeterias and throw in a coffee, I know a posh coffee place just around the corner here, which I normally go to get my coffee, is like 100 pesos, which is like £1.60 UK pounds and about $1.80 in US dollar terms for an Americana, a large cup of an Americana. You know, you'd be looking at spending maybe between 10 and 15,000 pesos on meals alone, and that's for eating out, like say 3 or 4 times of the week, and maybe cooking a couple of times, you know, out of that, or perhaps even, you know, going out to eat most of the time. I say that because a lot of people would like to do maybe a little bit of home cooking now and again, but you know, I'm including, that's what I say, like 12 to 15,000 pesos a month, you know, because it is sort of more of your, you know, that is like a realistic figure to give to you. But you know, I'm looking for suggestions, as in, like, you know, what actually is a carandira. Could I stand corrected in that? Could there be more to say, you know, how I explain? Could there be a better way of me explaining what a carandira is? Or, you know, suggestions on informal eating? Because, as I say, that is a very informal way of eating. You know, if you get like a satay stick, well, like they do in the street, actually selling, got the stalls out in the street and actually doing the satays right there and then in front of you. They range around the 80 peso mark, and you got a good bit of meat on there. And let's say you get a couple of those sticks for, say, 160 pesos. Take it home, yeah, and cook some rice for yourself, yeah, and then there you go, you got your dinner there for like 160 pesos. So I mean, you know, there are these affordable but yet nice and tasty meals that you can have without thinking that, you know, going to a restaurant. Think about when you're at home. It's not as if you go to restaurants all the time when you're at home, and there should be no exception if you're thinking of going to another country, sort of medium to long term, right? You know, you would be looking at a more informal way. And the other thing to my point is that, you know, we don't even have these choices, say, in England. And I know in America, you don't even have these sort of choices to have like very informal eating, like eating street food and eating out in these informal stores. So not only is there provision for not only is it very affordable to eat in this way without needing to cook at home, and your expenses is virtually like you know, because they are virtually like you're cooking at home. You know, that's the other bonus, that's the other benefit, if you like, to have the option to have this kind of informal eating. And for that you get affordable meals, good prices, and the food is local, it's tasty, you know, it's good food, you know. But I mean, yeah, it's affordable way of that side of the budget for your eating. And obviously eating is going to be one of the bigger parts of your budget, right? So that's all I wanted to say for this video, is that caranderias, informal eating out in food stores, coffee houses, it's for sure it's a way to go around here if you're looking at staying here for medium to long term, or staying here for long periods at a time. Yeah, there it is. I will see you later.